Welcome to the Products to Services podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Products to Services podcast. Today we're diving into what it really takes to lead product as a service and operational transformation in a global company. Our guest, Yann Carré, is leading Decathlon's circular and subscription initiatives, one of the most advanced product as a service programs in retail. Yann, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here with you.
Good to have you here, Yann. For every episode of the podcast, we like to focus on a certain domain within product as a services. And today we want to focus on the transformation journey and change management. Decathlon is known for sports gear, but behind the scenes, it's become a pioneer for circular business, refurbishment, second life, subscription across 7 continents. Yann, you've helped shift not just the products, but the mindset, the KPIs, the infrastructure, the business itself within Decathlon. And so I'm addressing now the audience of if you're a manufacturer working through internal resistance or scaling new business models, this episode is going to be packed with strategy, with data on operational insight, but most importantly on change management. You've been with Decathlon for almost 15 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right.
So before we dive into change management, let's explore why change was needed. So Decathlon growth means more emissions or meant more emissions, and product as a service offered a new path to still grow in value, but perhaps not in volume. What has been the pivotal insight that made Decathlon see product as a service and circularity more largely as a business transformation and not just as a sustainability? And when was that?
Okay. I think that there were a lot of initiatives or thoughts within our networks, sports or even retail or stores, thinking about the fact that circular economy has a real advantage on the linear economy, which was the fact that we could practice sports with less products. And when you know that Decathlon, the only CO2 impact, the one that we measure very well, quite well, I'm not talking about the rest of the impact that we should measure also, but in terms of water and whatsoever. But if we're talking about CO2, nearly 80% of our CO2 footprint is due to the fact that we're producing new products to be sold in our networks. So designing, producing, transporting, selling, and finally, at the end of the life, getting rid of. So it's 80% of our footprint. So literally, if you circularize the product and enable people to practice sports with less products, you will be improving your equation. So the real tipping point was when we decided that we could not anymore being a retailer with growth, which was the case before, but we had to have a sustainable growth. And it's a holistic decision that you have to take within your industry to be less impactful. Not saying that we would be the no impact company, because this is the kind of target and dream that we have for 250 in terms of milestone. Reducing our footprint would lead to many decisions, including the one that could start new circular businesses model. And actually, the company was already involved in circular business model. We didn't qualify them as such, but we were already repairing for many times. We also have been inventing something which was a kind of C2C approach when we invented the Trocathlon, which was a way for people to exchange their product with another people, but using us as a premises to do that kind of business. And then, of course, we've been disrupted by the C2C platform, the digital C2C platform. But we were repairing and we were also selling products in second life. So what was missing was to be able to rent products and to circularize products to, of course, reduce our impact. So the real reason was it was an opportunity for us to do it and to go in the direction that we decided to have, being more responsible and not only a growing company, having an opportunity for disruption and new businesses. We were quite confident about the fact that it could be profitable, and of course having a focus on the ratio of the value that we could create and the impact that we could have. One of the KPI we'll come back to that is about that.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, we'll definitely come back to the KPIs. For the listeners out there, Decathlon, most of them probably know Decathlon, but how can they imagine the subscription, the rental, the product as a service initiatives, offerings behind it for those that don't know it?
Well, it's mainly making sport through using a product, mainly investment product, mainly equipments, mainly bikes, in fact. If we're talking about the kind of the category of product that we're proposing in product as a service, it's mainly bikes. Kids bikes, of course, because there is a wonderful use case for kids bikes. Kids are growing. You need to change the bikes because they are growing. They have a different interest in different practices, so you have to be flexible about that. But also adult bikes, but it can be also fitness equipment, outdoor equipment that can be used as a service instead of being bought. So in fact, the offer is that you come to a store, and sometimes you also can order it online, but you come to a store, and the first one that we've been developing was the kids bikes as a service. In front of the stock, you just decide that you have the possibility either to buy it or to rent it. And you ask a teammate and say, okay, well, I would like to rent it because it's quite interesting in terms of price. So I would like to make it instead of buying it and making my problem with the end of life of this bike. How can I do it? And it's 5 minutes process, one smartphone, one credit card, and you can go on. That's it.
I, in fact, rented a bike, a kid's bike at Decathlon, and I was impressed by just how easy it was. Basically, there was a person coming to me, did everything on the phone, and then I was basically good to go. And I walked away with the bike, and everything was fine. And then kind of returning it whenever liked. This was a good process from an IT infrastructure, but I'm sure we'll come back to this one.
Yeah.
You mentioned kids' bikes, you mentioned adults' bikes. What type of product segments are particularly successful in this model? And are there certain countries, geographies where this works better?
Well, mainly equipment. If we're talking about having a consideration about circular economy, we're talking about repairing, we're talking about selling second life, and we're talking about renting, more or less. These are the three business models that we are sustaining as business model, because the fourth one is recycling, but it's not really a business model. Okay. So there is a market and there is room for a second life, for shoes or for apparels, garments, t-shirts, equipments. There is a market, mainly shoes. Let's take shoes, for example. There is a real market for second life, as you can find on Vinted or other platform. The people will think about, okay, I will acquire it and then I will resell it after the use, and I will be able to get a little value out of it. So I'm more in a process of thinking about buying and selling at the end of the use, I would say. So second life market. In other markets where equipment, you have to face the burden of ownership, the maintenance, the room it takes in your garage, the fact that you are not using it all the time because there is seasonality in your practice and so on and so on. Then rental by subscription is very interesting. It's also an interesting use case when you hesitate, for example, to go for a new sport. You want to practice a triathlon, but you are not willing to buy a bike at €3,000 minimum. So you will rent it. You want to have an electric bike and say that it could be a good alternative to taking the train or the tube or taking your car, but you're not sure that you will be okay with it. Then it's an opportunity to have it. So it's also a good way to test your real appetence to a new sport without the burden of buying at the very beginning, so paying much more, and having some services that will help you in the practice of the sports. So mainly equipment for us, and mainly bikes, fitness, outdoor. In countries, it depends on the category, because in some countries where there is heat and sun, it's different than from the one there is rain and cold, but kids' bikes, it's always the same, whatever the country is, because the use case is universal. If we're talking about home trainer, for example, it's a bit different from the south of Spain and the north of France. We try to adapt, and in some countries there is also businesses that can disrupt a little bit this. If you take, for example, Germany and Belgium, where the corporate bike leasing is developed very much, the comparison with a subscription business is difficult, because there is a lot of fiscal advantages to get some corporate bike leasing instead of having subscriptions. It can also disrupt a little bit and change a little bit the appetite of this market. But we find that in every geography, there is a room for, I don't want to buy it and I want to own it, I want to use it.
Okay, so this push for usership over ownership is the same across geographies. Then it's always, I'm going to say, more highly priced equipment, or at
Yeah.
least perceived price is high.
Yeah.
The lifespan of the equipment is more or less more on the
Yeah.
longer side rather than the shorter side. And then the repairability of the equipment needs to be there, but at least the burden is not borne by the customer, but is shifted back to you, I'm going to say, to Decathlon.
Exactly. It's a question of if you're just making a parallel with car industry, very very high prices, and people cannot afford to buy it cash or even with a credit, and they won't do it. So they prefer to rent it than buy it. So it's also the same. You are not very confident in the, I would say, value of the product in the future. You are not very confident, or you don't want to be trapped or to be set up by the fact that you will be evolving in your practice. So you want to have the flexibility. In fact, it's interesting that when you're designing a product, and we are designing product, that's why we understood why it was good for Decathlon and where it was good for Decathlon, because we have some product managers. We are designing products, meaning that we understand the advantages and the drawbacks of practicing a sport. So when we find drawbacks of ownership, maintenance, room, sense, price, ethnicity, we understand that usage can be a very good alternative to ownership. And that's why we developed it. And somehow we have also a use case, which is a universal sport use case that we can use it, is that when we are talking about equipment for kids, kids are growing, kids are evolving, kids are changing their size and their mind. And sometimes it's more interesting to have it as a service until you use it and you decided not to use it anymore, than buying and then mobilizing your money for that.
Okay, this is a very interesting aspect as well. I'm interested in how it started. So let's talk about what it took internally to make this scale, to make this model scale. At Decathlon, that meant rethinking how teams collaborate, how decisions were made. I've heard that the CEO as well as the VP of digital and the value chain were behind this model very strongly. How did you build the core coalition to launch this inside Decathlon? Must not have been an easy job.
No, it hasn't been easy every day. It's been fascinating, and it's been very energizing approach. Before joining Decathlon, I had the chance to be an entrepreneur, so I knew what it was to build a project, an entrepreneur project, a company. So it was it was like doing it again, but within the, I would say, the border of a company and with all the assets of a company. So it was exciting, but first you had to convince that it could be interesting. So the only way to do it is to go to the roots and to the sense. If you want to do it durably, and if you want to do it as a new business model that can durably being in the scope of the project, being more a coach than general, being more being in facilitation, showing the interest, being more a leader than a manager, and having your teams to be in that same, I would say, set, that helps to make the governance. But definitely in a big company like us, with many countries, many products, many projects, which are all interesting projects, the governance is the key. The key thing is not the easy part.
What was the frequency at which you reported back to the management on this initiative?
It's changed very much. It's changed with my management, because my management changed very much. At the very beginning, I was managed by the VP in charge of digital and value chain, and we were meeting every fortnight. 15 days we were going to a board, and we were smashed and challenged. And why do you do that? Why do you not do that? Why do you go so fast? It's too slow. It's too risky, and that kind of thing. So it was shaky, but it was quite interesting, because it led us to be very focused on the result and being very prioritized. And then we change a little bit the governance of circularity overall, because that kind of behavior, I would say, it works to start, but then when you have to synchronize repair with Second Life, with rental, it needs more, I would say it needs a little bit more collaboration and maybe less energy in execution. So it's changed also with the maturity of the project. But yes, for me, talking about product as a services, I was starting with a product manager. So I was in charge of strategy and business. He was in charge of digital tools, because it all was about digital. But we were meeting with the team and as a product management team every week, and we were meeting with the stakeholders every week. And then depends on the high level which level, sorry, of reporting that you're talking with. But if we're talking about the managing director of the company, the CEO of the company at that time, Michel Abalea, we had, and it was a wonderful opportunity, governance principle that Michel has been setting up at that time. We had an opportunity to meet him not only me, but disruptive project supporting the business. We had the opportunity to meeting every month and a half, just for him to be sure and to understand what was going on. We know he was not directly going and diving in our business, but we knew that sometimes it helped us, even if we didn't see it directly. So it was quite interesting.
That's really supporting an innovative entrepreneurial spirit. It's good. That's good to hear. What percentage of Decathlon's business is now involved in some sort of product as a service activity?
It's around 3 to 4%. If we're talking about the gross market value of what we're generating, because now we're talking about GMV, not only about TO, because we're having also marketplaces, it's from 3 to 4%. So it's very low at the beginning. But every big tree is begin as a seed. So it's slow, but the growth is quite interesting. I remember last year, nearly 1/4 of the growth of the company has been done with the circular business models. So of course, when the growth of the linear business model, which is the main one, is very strong, our proportion is less than that. But we are supportive on the growth of the market. And we're also measuring the growth out of the consequences of these new businesses models that exist. But yes, it's around that. In terms of volume, it's limited because, as we said, it's mainly about equipment. Even if we're talking about repair and second life, it's mainly about bikes because this is the most market. But there is a huge market about, apparel, which is not equipment, which is very big in terms of value, which is not concerned really by the as a service. So it can't be huge. But
Yeah.
the growth is very interesting. It was nothing in 2021, nothing, zero. And it's in millions today, 2-digit millions, and it's growing fast, more than 100% every year. So we'll see where
100% every year.
more than 100.
That's good to hear. And I imagine also the nature of product as a service, which is that you need to wait a certain number of months or even years in order to get your revenue, which naturally, mathematically also postpones some of the benefits of the model, which is also, so in the years to come, you will reap the benefits of something that has started perhaps a year or 2 years. Yann, we touched upon it before, but KPIs, metrics, what are you tracking? What are you monitoring regarding the subscription model?
At the very beginning of this project, I had 3 KPIs in mind, and we didn't change. What I say about KPIs. We have a lot of indicators. All indicators all KPIs are indicators, but all indicators are not KPIs. So I had 3 in mind because there were 3 were very important for me. The first one was about satisfaction of customers and teammates, because this makes the market or not. Because you can have some communication, media, marketing, and so on to sustain a market. But if there is no traction, if there is no natural traction by the satisfaction that you provide the market with, there is no market development that you can sustain. I thought it was important that we had this thing. So very, very beginning, we tried to measure the customer review, client review, and the NPS score for the teammates to understand whether there was an appetite for this market or not. And there was. Second one is the volume, because you have to grow fast in volume in a company like Decathlon, because otherwise it's a nice project, it's a nice initiative, but it will remain a side initiative if there is no capability to make the volume, because we are a company of volume. So even if we are talking about less volume of product, we are not talking about less volume of satisfied customers. So we have to make the volume and to have the perspective of making the volume. So of course, the TO, the GMV, the quantities was quite of the KPIs we're working and monitoring. And the third one, which is not an easy one to get, was to understand finally what was the net margin compared to the kilogram of CO2 that we're putting, all greenhouse gases that we're putting in the atmosphere. So we are measuring how many kilograms of CO2 we are issuing in the atmosphere when we are doing our business for every product, reported to every product, every model of our product. We know the kilograms of CO2 it requires, including all the life cycle of the product. And then finally, we measure the net margin that we can get out of this business and the contribution in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So that were the 3 KPIs. If you are aligned with a true satisfaction, you are making the growth for volume, and you are more interesting than the business as usual in terms of contribution of value, euro per kilogram of CO2 that you're generating, you're on the right lane.
Okay, so very, very simple KPIs in the end. And I like the first one was very much customer satisfaction and team satisfaction driven. Are there other KPIs for the finance team specifically that?
Yeah. Of course, one of the problem of recurring business and product as a service or product as a use, which is completely different from media as a service, for example, or software as a service, of service as a service, I would say, is that you have an asset, you have a tangible asset. The trouble is that when you refuse, whatever the reason, to pay your monthly bill to Netflix, they will cut the stream, and that's it. And there is no more value out in the nature that you have to bear in your accounts and so on and so on. And okay, you won't have the money, but you won't distribute the service. When you're doing product as a service and you have been paid for the first 3 or 4 months, there is a reason why a customer will pay for the monthly fee, because he will change his bank, because he will have some troubles, because he decided to do it on purpose, is a fraud or whatsoever, then you have a trouble because you have value of your stock which is outside of the company and you don't have the revenue. So you have to provision the value of the remaining stock and you have to provision the fact that you don't have the revenue. So this is one of the KPI which was very important when you're making product as a service, which is the risk management. And especially when you're in a B2C business, because in a B2C business, the company is the big guy, the strong guy, the evil. The customer is the poor guy that you have to protect, especially in Europe. So it's complex to handle this situation. So one of the KPI that we're monitoring was the fraud risk, the non-payment risk, which is very important, of course. And then I would say also one of the KPI which is important for finance team is about the capability to circulating, so to making more contract on one product, more than one contract on one product, of course. So this is one of the KPI which is important, of course. And then this is the same KPI that you have for business as usual.
The risk one, the fraud risk one, is a very interesting one. I'd love to learn a bit more about it. Are there any numbers that you can share on how many times this happens and what you did to counter this risk?
I won't talk about the numbers because I consider that first, I'm not sure I'm authorized to do it, but it really depends on your context, in fact. We had a strategy that makes our number of fraud high, much higher than what it should be to be a profitable business at the beginning, because our strategy was to say to a customer, as you lived it when you did it for your kid, it will be a 5-minute process, very simple, with no complexity. If you're going today to the smartphone as a service market, digital, online, you will have a very robust onboarding process that will check that finally you are not a frauder and finally that you will have some guarantee that you will be paid. Otherwise, your business is dead. When it's kids' bikes, it's a bit different. And when you're doing it from store, it's a bit different because you can have the KYC, know your customer. The people will come to a store physically. They will not be online. And it's about kids' bikes. And kids' bikes, there is not the same appetence for the second market of kids' bike that it can be for an iPhone or for a smartphone. So the figures were high because we decided that the UX would be simple with no obstacles. So of course, no obstacles make it a room for frauders, and they took advantage of it. And the other thing was that if we want, this was really my vision of the strategy. If we want to scale and if we want to be able to make this business living in the future, we have to get the volume. If we want to get the volume, we have to reduce all the obstacles that you have at subscription process at the very beginning. And when you will get the volume and when it will hurt you so much because you get the volume of the problems, you will find the resources to find the solution because you're embarked on. You don't have the choice. You cannot make a U-turn and go back to your home and say, okay, let's be safe on this business as usual. So this strategy or these tactics, I would say, led us to have strong fraud and payment level that we monitored and that we've been working from the very first day, but accepting the fact that at the beginning we had a higher fraud rate. It was a 2-digit one. We're reducing to a 1-digit one. And in this business, we consider that the right level would be below 3% net, but we are higher than that today. And then also it will depend on the structure of your P&L. If your P&L can allow you to have more than that, why not? But the trouble is that if you leave your customer have the mindset that they cannot pay you and that it's okay for everybody because it's not worth going back to your money and so on, then you have a problem because you have a breach in the wall. So this is a complexity that we have to tackle, and we are tackling it. And it depends also on the legislation, because you won't go and to get the same approach when you're going into Spain, into Germany, Belgium, and France. It's not done the same way, so it's a complex one.
It's not an easy one. It's not an easy one. Thought that came to my mind is the registration process when you rent a car. When you go on Sixt, for instance, and you rent a car, they ask you quite a lot of questions. They ask you to upload documents as your driving license, for instance, but it's done in a very agreeable way. Oh. So probably these are also sources of inspiration to get and to see if there can something be retaken. In Belgium, we have It's Me also, kind of an app where you can certify that it is actually you doing this, and it gives you the right ID information about the person you're dealing with. But
there is a lot of solution. We know that there is a lot of solution, but as you said, there is no rocket science is making product as a service. But a lot of problem to tackle. If you aggregate all the problem that you have to handle and the solution that you have to implement to get to the final perfect target or the one that you dream of, it will take time. But yes, there are solutions to find to struggle about this. Many discussions with other companies, other industries, the smartphone industries, the smartphone as a service industries, and when you're talking to them, they show you the solution that you can get. It's all about scoring your client. It's all about having prevention, about IDs, about your revenues. You can go to open banking to have some securities that you don't have in a normal payment. You can go to wire transfer instead of credit card credit and that kind of thing. Many solutions exist, but it takes time to implement. And we decided that it was more important for us to grow fast in volume and in appetence, to create the momentum, and then to handle the problem, then to build a very secured situation, which led finally to complexity. And finally, it's like a sparkle. There is a sparkle, and sometimes there is a sparkle and nothing more. And sometimes there is a sparkle and it explodes. So what is the level of arbitration you have on easy subscription process and secure subscription process? It was an arbitration we made. We could have done it differently. We've done it that way. And I consider that it was one of the reasons of the success, because it was so easy for the people and our customer to come, that it also led to growth, a natural growth that we had. But yes, if you don't handle that, it's the poison pill. It's the poison pill. It kills your business.
I really like the message here to allow, I'm not going to say allow a certain risk of fraud, but to allow risk in launching this and then figure out how to manage it in the best way. But getting traction is much more important.
Yeah, but this is not the kind of testimony you will get from a CFO. You'll get from an entrepreneur, but not from a CFO. The CFO will say the contrary and say, no risk, no risk.
Yeah. But it's...
And you have to work with the CFO, because of course, at the end, if you don't have any solution, you kill your business. So it's important that you step by step, ferociously.
Step by step, as you say. Yann, this could go on for hours. We're nearing the end, unfortunately. I do have 3 questions for you. I know that Decathlon is in retail, but I think the playbook can be applied across a broader B2B manufacturing industries that want to move towards product as a service. If today or tomorrow you had to relaunch this product as a service initiative within an industrial company, would you do it the same, or would you do something different?
I would probably do something different, because now I have the experience of what it means to do that kind of thing. Well, I think that I would first, in B2B, the level of the building up that kind of business process can be different, because you can come to a few bunch of clients and say, okay, guys, we'd like to go to that. It's your interest. It's our interest. How can we develop it together? That you cannot do it with somebody coming in your store, okay, in a B2C process. So you can just understand within your customers and within your market who would be eligible to work with you and to cooperate and to collaborate to build the solution from business as usual to business as a service. So this is different from the C2B and the B2B. So I would definitely try to identify the people who were motivated to do it for the right reasons, not only for money and only for money, but for the security it will lead, the previsibility it will lead, the impact it will provide you with, that kind of thing. And I would take time and I would say, okay, guys, we have an opportunity to do it. We won't be perfect at the very beginning, but I need you to help me to be perfect. The more we collaborate, the faster we'll go, and that will be better for us. And we'll learn about that all together. This, you cannot do it with B2C businesses. You have to be ready when you open your store, you have to be ready. And when you're Decathlon, people will come and say to you, I'm expecting from Decathlon what I got from Decathlon as a business as usual. So something like perfect, very good level. So you cannot provide me with a kind of shitty POC. In B2B, you can build up your strategy a little bit differently. I think that also the acceptance of product as a service is much more easier in B2B, because B2B, they understand the TCO, the total cost of ownership.
Less emotion.
Individuals in consumption do not really see the point about the total cost of ownership. They see the selling price and compare the selling price from a retailer to another or a solution to another. Yeah. The TCO is really important when you're talking about product as a service, because there is a value of the service. And the value of the service for B2B is much more valuable and much more valued than it can be for B2C. So I think it's easier to do it in B2B than in B2C. And that's a reason why in B2C we are not a lot of companies that are proposing B2C product as a service in B2C, because of the difficulties what we're talking about.
Very true.
I would concentrate on the very important process we were talking about at the very beginning. So billing, being able to bill you, being able to provide the service, track, also having the traceability of the product during the services to see the value contribution. And yes, of course, the stock management and the reverse logistic and so on and so on. It's true also that the B2B will expect a level of service. They can pay for it, but they will expect a level of service, and they will say, okay, I'm expecting a level of service because I'm paying for it. When an individual will say, yes, I know that there is the service, but finally the reasoning is that they're just dividing the monthly fee by the new fee, the price of the new product, and say, okay, in X months, I'm paying the product. They are thinking like that, which is not the case for B2B.
Very clear. Second question, what is the most underestimated part of making product as a service real?
Transformation process. Difficulty of the transformation process and the difficulty it leads, because you're colliding literally into the business as usual life of a robust, growing, dynamic company that has so many other products which are important for the company, that when you're coming to the game and say, okay, guys, we'll do it differently, that will be complex. You don't have the solution we have to invest on. People say, why should we do it? What the fuck? Why shouldn't we stay? And so definitely I underestimated the resistance of change that this kind of project is providing, is meaning, in fact. Definitely I would give more space to coaching the transformation in my team, with my team, and with the other teams that are involved. Because the situation we came through, dream, adoption, rejecting, troubleshooting is normal in transformation. But when you know it's normal, and when you're in the process of doing it, then you can accept it. When you're facing it like it comes, it makes it complex, and it leads many times, to a lot of stress and conflict, because people understand it's good for the planet, it's good for them, but on their very everyday business, you're just bothering them. You're just troubling the business as usual. So this is definitely what I underestimated, and I would also invest more time, money, energy, and resources to accompany the team that is in charge of making this transformation, because it's very conflictual. So it can be exhausting sometimes.
To structure and to guide this transformation journey from within. Good. This brings us to the very last question. For leaders starting this product as a service journey, what's the one piece of advice that you would give them?
Okay. If you allow me, I will read what I thought about that, because many things can come. So I'm trying to make the best of it. So I prefer what I wrote than what I will say.
Sure.
If I would find someone who is truly convinced about product as a service, again, for the sense that it brings, definitely would be an experienced people, because you will have to convince a lot of stakeholders and understand the way a company is working. I would give that to in transformation, not in building a company. In transformation, I wouldn't give that to a new generation, I would say, but I would like to find someone who's very motivated to do it for the right reasons. So I think it starts with the leadership that you can find within your organization, but this leadership will be also inspired by the real reason why you as a CEO are doing that. If it's just doing it for doing it, forget it. It's too complex. It will lead to a POC and then it will stop. If you really understand the reason why it's important for the future of your company, for the next 50 years to come, and you're inspiring that, you will find some people who can be able to do it. So you have to be, I would say, transpiring and sweating a product as a service as a CEO and being convinced it can work. And on the other side, you also have to have very clear KPIs that can say that sometimes, even if it's a good idea, if it's not the right good timing for the good idea. So I would say that, and I would a team of 12 salopards, say in English.
I don't know either.
People,
This one.
people translate the 12 bastard, I would say, in reference to the movie, the famous movie, the Western movie. No, I tried to find a bunch of a team very motivated to act as a team, nearly as a commando at the beginning, because this is quite transformational, so it needs a lot of more energy, and then to find the time and team to take the relay, because there is a time for the 1 to 10, for the 0 to 1 or 2 million, and there is a time for the 2 to 12.
Integration.
It's not the same team. It's not the same process. Not the same way. Not the same personalities.
Yeah, I think this is very, very valuable advice. It's people, but the people can change over time. And the people that you need initially are not necessarily to integrate it back into the business and make it scale afterwards. And everyone has their merits behind it, but very, very important.
Yeah, that's why I quitted this job. I was good for the beginning and starting, but I'm not the best one to scale. There is somebody who's better than me, and it requires different skills, different approaches, different mindset. So it's good. And for you, it requires also a little bit of time of rest to rebuilding you up, because this is fascinating, but it's very exhausting.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Super interesting. Yann, merci beaucoup. This was a masterclass in building change from the inside out. So for the manufacturers out there that are listening, product as a service isn't just a small product shift. I think this was very, very clear here that it's a business model transformation. So Yann, merci beaucoup for joining today.
Merci, Florian.
Thank you very much. For the listeners out there at P2S, products to services, product to subscriptions, this is where we come in. We help B2B manufacturing companies, product companies, so hardware selling companies. We help them on their product as a service initiatives, on designing it from a strategy point of view, but then most importantly on the execution, because the strategy is good, but the implementation, I think we've heard it today, is where the value sits. So if this sparked some ideas, please subscribe to the show, whether it's Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever. There's a lot of interesting episodes that are going to come with leaders such as Yann that have lived the change from within. And then if you're interested in having a conversation, we've seen more than 300 cases of successful manufacturers that are doing product as a service. Happy to share information with you. See you next time. Merci beaucoup.
And good news is a free subscription.
Exactly. It's a free subscription if you've paid your Spotify or Apple subscription.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's not on you. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Products to Services podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, subscribe and listen to the other episodes. You can also follow us on our platforms to stay up to date. See you next time.